just to clarify, it isn't Groundhog Day. Myself and Neville are back, but I can assure you that we won't be polluting the airwaves every week. It's just happened that we got a 2-for-1 deal in back-to-back weeks. Last week we spoke to, the focal point was on youth, and we spoke to Cian Galvin and Darren Murphy, and now we're looking at the young at heart, as we, 50 years on from a famous senior championship win in 1970, we're delighted to be joined by three men who were instrumental in bringing back the senior title to Clarecastle for the first time in 21 years, both on and off the field. We would have loved to have marked this golden anniversary with some sort of a function where all the players, the administrators, their families, mentors and things would be able to reminisce and celebrate it, but obviously in these times it just simply wasn't possible. So hopefully we'll get that opportunity in the future, but instead for the moment Neville and I, as I said, are delighted to be joined by three men. Firstly, I'll introduce, I suppose we can only describe as the Benjamin Button of Clarecastle hurling, Pascal Russell. The then joint secretary and a future TD for 2 decades in Donal Carey, and a man that in his first year as chairman managed to work the oracle in bringing back a senior title to Clarecastle. Welcome along, all three of you anyway.
Thank you.
Pascal, I suppose 50 years on, where did the time go?
It kind of goes fast, all right, you know that. You'd never think it. A long time ago. But thanks be to God we're here to witness it, which is important, I suppose.
You must have been only in nappies in 1970, were you?
No, actually. No, the 1970 was my 4th county final. So I was, I wouldn't say it was mature, like, you know, but it was old enough anyway.
I suppose we're here to talk about 1970, but I suppose in order to, you know, I suppose Neville might have been a teenager back in 1970, but I, for one, wasn't born. I'm sure a lot of the listeners and viewers maybe weren't around or weren't born either. So maybe, Gus, if you can kind of, it was a much different landscape. We'll try and paint a picture of Clarecastle in the 1960s, let's say, for instance. It's a much different landscape we see today. It was much more, it was a village back then.
Well, it was so active, you know. Apart from the hurling side of it, you had the yearly regattas, you had the Fair of Clare, and a lot of people around on those particular occasions, you know. But the hurling, I think, was the thing, you know, that everybody was so committed to hurling. Football was there for a period of time also, and you had those followers of football who liked to play the game and follow up on the championship matches and things like that. But yes, the hurling was the talk of everywhere, you know, and had been beaten so long or so often, you know, people just decided that something has to be done. And then when people started talking, and there was work done, and a lot of effort was put into it, a huge amount of effort put into it. And the dedication shown by the players and the panel, you know, was just unreal, you know, unreal. Knowing deep down that they had it to do it. They knew that they had it within themselves to do it, just to get them to do it and get them out there and play, you know. And a lot of training went in, a lot of exercising went into it, and proved good in the end, in the 70 match anyway.
Yeah.
Donal, I suppose back in the 60s and 70s, Clarecastle was a lot different then. Say, we had a lot more houses starting to come into the place, and Centix was starting above, and the port and the railway station wasn't as busy as what it used to be then. And so, like, how did you see it then? Can you paint another picture for the likes of me that wasn't around?
Well, having been a long-term student, I came back to Clarecastle. that was beginning to lift up, mainly because there was employment sources there at the time. You had Shannon Airport was beginning to develop, and quite a lot of Clarecastle people were working mainly on the construction side. But as well as that, there were other jobs in Shannon Airport. We were competing with the Newmarket and Fergus people for jobs in the kitchen and in the duty free. And as well as that, Ennis started with a couple of small factories along the Clon Road. By and large, the emigration that was feature of the 50s kind of stopped in the 60s, and we got, I suppose it's best illustrated in the 1970 team panel, the team that ended up winning the championship, like that John Hanley, who was the trainer, he encouraged everyone that wanted to take part in hurling that year to take part, and there was an amazing number of people turned out, tugged out for the county final. Everyone was looking at it. We had nearly 2 teams out on the field for the photograph, and jostling for places and all that went on, you know. As well as that, then you had long-term people playing with Clarecastle. If I want to speak about, for instance, Michael Slattery had been playing senior hurling, I'd say, from 1956. And he had been there a long time, and all the frustration of losing all those county finals in the 60s, that was all there in the sporting side. I mean, we had great victories, but we also had terrible losses. And needless to say, we drowned our sorrows each time and came back for more. I'd like to, that John Handley came back and he looked after juveniles and minors. And 1970 was one of the few years that he got stuck into the senior hurling. And we had 3 selectors that year. We had Harley Daly and Jerry Murphy and Patrick McMahon. And the county final teams were picked up in the railway station in Ennis, where Harley Daly was on evening duty. And things weren't going to plan. I was evicted because I was taking sides with Harley. They wouldn't pick the team unless... So it ended up anyway that there were people disappointed they didn't get their place. And there were other people exhilarated because they did get their place. And the 2 fellas that lost their places, Michael Slattery and George Horton, both came on in the replay and made a significant contribution in that final. George Horton, as Pascal might remember, was a great fella for holding the ball, even though he was a small little fella. And he held the ball, and I think he got either 2 or 3 frees, which I think Frankie Mack scored. I don't know how many. Frankie scored a few of them anyway, and maybe Tom Slattery scored another. And John Russell was very proud of the changes that he made that day from the sideline. John was shouting at the selectors, "Are you going to do anything about it? Are you going to do anything about it?" And we did, the changes were made. And, I suppose there was a hangover from the Newmarket game because we hadn't beaten Newmarket for the decade. And in 1970, we had a young Tipperary lad, Patsy Condon. And Patsy Condon had a different style and he'd hair up the sideline. And the Newmarket crowd were never showing that kind of discipline from the Clarecastle side before, with the result that things changed. And they got irritated, and I think the Clarecastle crowd got just as irritated. There were a few bang-bangs, and the match finally ended with Clarecastle winning. Waxkin got great goals that day. He really did. And people, I knew priests that came home from South Africa. And they'd ring up our house and ask, when is the county final on? Are Clarecastle in the county final? And is Waxkin playing? And they couldn't understand how poor Wax, who had an extra barrel in front of him, could run as fast as he could and could swing a hurley as fast as he did. And in that county semi-final, he really showed his skill, even though he had been playing a long time too. And in Clarecastle, after the semi-final beat Newmarket, there were bonfires lit and everything. You'd swear we had the county final. and the bus going to Newmarket was greeted with cheers and to surround it in the main street with people shouting in at the Newmarket fellas, who of course were shouting back out. But anyway, all of that was a big part of the 60s and 70s, the rivalry between Clarecastle and Newmarket. But it was kind of, Clarecastle had dominated the 40s, a continuous stream. Of course, his uncle actually was the last captain, Tommy Considine, in 1949. Tommy Considine, and when I became club secretary, John Daly, who was captain in 1945, and Tommy Considine and Bernie and these all got after us to see what we could do to keep the club going. They were afraid in the 60s that it would die. But we got sponsors, and we used to bring the teams, sponsor the teams, the Clarecastle teams that played in all those games, recalling each year from 1939, 1938, 1939, down along to the end of the 40s. And we bring those people over to the hall in Clarecastle. We'd have 2 barrels of porter cooling in Oliver Plunkett's fridge in order to give them draft porter if they didn't drink anything else. And a great day was had by all. And from that, the bingo started. And Mickey Keane and John McInerney and Tom Slattery and Mickey Dart. I leave someone out now. I shouldn't have started with all the names maybe, but they were the backbone of the finance that we had that eventually came along to buy the fields, McNamara's fields, which was really led by Father Barry, a curate that came here. And we sold those fields for sites, and that helped us to buy Clare Abbey.
And Pascal, you speak about the club there, and people look at the facilities now and they think, the kind of superb facilities are there now, but at the time, you didn't have a field there for a long time. You didn't own your own field, let's say.
Yeah, that's very true. Donal's after giving the great history of time before I was even born. And I'd just like to comment on, it's a coincidence that the 2 guys on my left and right were both involved in my first juvenile championship in 1962. Donal and Gussie training as well. And Gussie was actually responsible, well, he wasn't responsible, but he was there on a Sunday evening when we got on television, training for the under 16 final. Danish crowd, I think, was here, or a Swedish crowd or something like that, to recognise my talents back then even. They came along outside of the Fiends and pulled up with a truck and video, and came over and asked either Gussie or Donal, can we, the game was unusual to them, obviously. And can we video this? And they did, and they gave us a couple of bob, and Gussie brought us up to the Abbey stores, Tracy Considine's, and we got taters, I think, and ice cream, and lemonade. I don't know what Gussie got out of it, but that's what we got out of it, so I've been involved with these two guys a long time, actually. They would have been the instigators of my love for the game, I have to say. Donal especially, bringing you to matches and things like that, getting me on county teams, underage especially, that. But go back to your question, the facilities were completely different. They helped in some way, that was the funny part of it. The Devines, you mightn't even remember the Devines, but the boys will remember the Devines. At the top end of the field, it was probably the proper size, but as it tapered down towards the road, it narrowed in, so, and from the 30 or 40 yards into the Sheedy's goal, as we said, was very narrow, and if you were forward then, you had two things to do. Either you go for the ball and get killed, like with the boys, Tom Slattery and Jack Maloney and all these guys, or you became fast, you sped up, so you got the ball, you didn't delay with it, and you got rid of it. So that kind of made up your mind what you were going to do. There was no dressing rooms, obviously. We tugged out under the tree. There was a tree there, do you remember, inside the gate. Hail, rain or snow, you tugged out there and you put your clothes there. Right? So you had to put those back on again after rain. But to wash yourself, there was a half barrel inside the gate. Now, don't forget the Devines was occupied by cows all the time. So when you go on training, you had to clear the cows back up to the Flint side of the field. So after the game, when you got some of the shite on your legs, you had to go to the barrel to clean it. But then you had to walk back to the muck again. So you were never really clean. And too many of us didn't have showers and things at that stage at home either. But yeah, we had that. We had the veins in the pump field. Mrs. Lynch, in fairness, gave us the loan of that, and we had raw ones on occasions as well. But you made done with it, we didn't have anything else. We knew of nothing else, so it wasn't any great, pain to us or anything like that.
Yeah. And Pascal, you mentioned your youth there a minute ago. And Donal has mentioned a lot of good people there as well, but who were your local heroes when you were growing up, say?
I'd be loath to say who my heroes were, growing up, but I do remember Dr. Maloney below on the field. And, as young fella, you'd be there, and he was playing in goal and in the backs, So I always had him down as a goalie, I have to say, and he used to come down from Ennis, so he was odd for me, he wasn't, not that he was odd, but he was odd that we had a fellow from Ennis coming down training with us. Actually, he was a cousin of my own, come to think of it, but he would be I can remember my own brother Paddy, of course, as well, and played with him subsequently. But fellas like that, Pat Mullins as well, and these was Martin Enright, the unsung heroes, as well. These are the guys, But and obviously the Tom Slattery's, Michael Slattery, would have been outstanding back then as well. Doc Mack, Mike Mack, that was Curley. Frank. These Frank. Well, I huddled with Frank. Frank is one of my own. But these are going back into older fellas. Sorry, Curley, but fellas like that. I didn't see too much of Polly Dale, but I'd have been too young at that stage. But then you heard all the stories of those guys, Tally Gannan as well, Patcher Daly, so they'd be just before my time, they would be the ones. Then I grew up with got onto teams, first of all, then would have been in 66, it would have been with Tom Slattery, Chris Anran, Frankie Mack, like he was placed on the field with Frankie Mack, like, beautiful hurler that he was. Fellas like that, Joe Considine in goal as well, like, Mallet's father. Good goalie. Gussie's cousin, actually, yeah, first cousin.
That 1970s team is very resilient. If you saw all the people in the photograph for the county final, I think there's only 4 of them have passed away. Health-wise, they were great.
Yeah.
And when I was talking there, sorry for interrupting you, but I should have mentioned, as far as the employment goes, that the pipe factory was still working in Lissan. And it was sort of permanent work that time, even though it was hard work. And most of the people working in it seemed to be happy. But it was supplemented by boats coming into the quay. And they finished up really in the 60s. But Clarecastle, they were always very strong in making out for themselves. And that was illustrated in the hurling, because every time Clarecastle were in a county final, they had a boom for the resources of Clare County Board. We filled the park. If you look at the photographs, Clarecastle and Crusheen, and hang up 8,000 and 9,000 people at it. Now, I don't know whether you get those today, whether it is the quality of the hurling or what it is, but I don't think you get 8,000 or 9,000 for a county final.
Yeah, I think the Crusheen one, Donald, there was actually more there, it was a fantastic crowd. There was 10,000 or 11,000 there at it. It was, at the time, it was kind of a record crowd, so, yeah, the fishing as well brought a lot of money, there was a lot of families involved in the fishing. But then you had peripheral people working with them, or fishing with them, getting the third, if you were to buy in the boat, you got a third, the owner had a third, and if he was fishing himself, you got another third. So that supplemented wages for people, But there was as well in the you were saying the 50s and the late early 60s.
It interfered with the hurling.
Oh, of course. Hurling didn't start until July or something. Yeah. Fishing finished in I think it was the 19th of July or something. Training started then, I say. It's very hard to younger people to see what actually went on. There was none of all these. The way Dale goes on the television, I alluded to that, That's the new word that you use, isn't it? It is, yeah. Do you ever hear them doing alluded? You alluded to that, there, Donald. We were talking about that, is what we'd say. Taylor, it's a gas man, isn't he? Sorry about that, Taylor.
Yeah, I suppose, and it was a thriving port, and, there was a railway station and everything there, at the time, yeah. Gus, I suppose, it was last about the history there. There was the Ennis Dolls, the amalgamation with Clarecastle and Éire Óg in 1928. There was 3 titles in the 40s. But there was kind of a feeling, maybe some experienced players there and some youth as well coming through, that the Clarecastle were on the rise in the early 60s. But that was fair enough, was it?
I said it would be, I think, yeah. And as I was saying, that the feeling was there within the individuals that they know they had to do something extra to make up for the losses previous to this, So they put their heart and soul in, as I said below, and as I said earlier on, they gave everything in training. You couldn't ask for any more, and they proved, the county final in the 70s really proved it, that the huge effort they put into it. And, to the pity then, there was a bit of a lapse again after that. But maybe a new generation of young fellas taking up the job again like that, so. But the 71, I think, was the turning point in it, and for the years to come after that, anyway. We missed a few more, right, but I think we made up, down the line, we made up for it, I think, anyway. Eventually, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Donal, you mentioned him there a few minutes ago, John Hanley. How influential was his appointment as headmaster back in the 1960s?
It kind of changed things. His dad had an interest in hurling. He came from Waterford. But John himself, because he had been a successful player with Clarecastle and had even encouraged it, his first appointment outside of Dublin, he worked in Westland Row in Dublin, but he moved to Portlaoise where he met his late wife Maura, and he brought Clarecastle teams, the Clarecastle minor team, in a new fleet of Ford Cortinas, or one of those early Ford brands anyway. They hired 5 of them and self-drove from Clarecastle to Portlaoise to play the Laois County minor team in Portlaoise. That was a kind of a reward for winning the minor final of the previous year. Now, the thing about rewards, even in the 70s, we didn't fall down on that either. I don't know who was the first person to contact Alf Murray. I think it was Michael Stratry, about adopting Armagh, because we were in italics a very prominent senior hurling club, that we would adopt Armagh as a promotion to see if we could improve hurling qualities in Armagh. And we took 2 buses to Armagh, and they were full, and we were given instructions. Gussie was on one bus and I was on the other.
Yeah.
And we had our instructions from the bus drivers, who were a bit nervous about all of this, because that time the racket, I suppose is what you could call it, was beginning to heat up in the north, although when we got to Armagh, it was still, Armagh city itself was still kind of undisturbed, not like later where housing estates were burnt down and everything. But in any case, we went up there and we spent a weekend in Armagh, and Clarecastle played twice in senior and minor. We stopped on the way up in Edgeworthstown, and this was only for people who were supposed to take lemonades. There was no need to go to the pubs, but we found great difficulty in getting them out of the pub. And the wise boys went to furthest pub away from the buses. So that by the time we got back from being down the far end, they were gone out of the bus at the other end. So the only real solemn moment in Armagh was when we went up to Mass in the cathedral, and we met the Cairn. And Pascal was with me, and Gussie, and we'd had a game of poker the night before. Right. And I cleaned them all out. That was a memory I have. But anyway, we made great friends in Armagh, and they came down then to us. And the exchange went on for years. I remember particularly the Kirk brothers, who were, one of them was a teacher.
Yeah, Inda and Jim. Jim was the teacher.
Jim was the teacher.
And Inda, yeah.
And then there was a husband and wife.
Paddy Devlin and Madeline.
Paddy Devlin.
Yeah.
Of course, he knows the other. Who was the other? His great friends with your brother Mike.
Donaldson. Eamon Donaldson.
Donaldson, yeah. He goes. I met him at the races in Punchestown. Donaldson. It's a big change between hurling and racing.
And a relationship that's thrived between Cuchulainn and Clarecastle since, obviously, and it just started in that twinning in 1970 that has gone on to be so successful. Just wind back a small bit, Pascal, I suppose looking before 70, 64 was a big, let's say maybe it was a step forward, let's say. It was the first senior final in 8 years, and they also won the minor A for the first time, I think, since 1950 that year. You know, I mean, even though they lost the senior final to Newmarket, it was still a major step forward, wasn't it?
Yeah. 64 was, I think they won the minors in 58, did it? 58 or 56, I think. And we had won we had won the juveniles in 62, which was an under-16 competition. And the same team, by and large, in 64, won the minor against Ennis Rovers. Again, a little row ensued. I think we were beginning to fade for a while in the game below Newmarket. And a little row between, I suppose I can't mention his name, but he was very involved in the club subsequently as a secretary. Myself and Pat Coffey and Ennis, they had a little altercation. And things started to turn our way. And it was a fantastic win. It was against all the odds because they were winning everything. So that was kind of the seed for the team coming forward, I'd say, in the 66, 7, 8, 9. There were players coming out of that, you know, so. And
let's say if you take, like, Clarecastle played 5 consecutive finals from 67 to 71.
Yeah, 2 draws as well, 3 draws, sorry, in that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like Newmarket at the time, I think they won 12 titles in 16 years, in 63 and 78.
They had a great team.
And unfortunately beat Clarecastle in 7 of those finals.
Yeah, 7
I mean,
or 8 champions.
it must have been very, very difficult to take, you know, particularly the ones in 67 to 69, to lose 3 finals in a row to the same team must have been very, very difficult, was it?
Yeah.
It was, I tell you, but, like, you know, Newmarket were fantastic, like, let's end to that, like, there's no question of that. They were a great team. They won the Munster Club Championship, I think, in 68, 69. There was no All-Ireland at the time. They'd have walked it then as well. We were the only team that could give them a game of it. It says something for the resilience of Clarecastle. I know people will throw at you like, you lost final after final. Of course we did. We always bounced back. And that says something more, I think, about a team. It's easy to go out and hurl if you're winning, like, you know, it is great. Everything is very enjoyable. Go out and lose. It hurts more. And then it's what you're made of after that will bring you back, like, you know. So 67 was a great game. I remember that was my first county final, and I played on the late Danher, Liam Danner, who died there this year. Rest in peace to him and all that, like. And it was great playing on Danner. Danner was a Munster player at the time. Yeah. And I was in and out on him, like, you know, for my first county final. But he was after hurting his hand. He got a broken finger, I don't know, 6 weeks before or something like that. And at the time, you lined out in the middle of the field, everyone 15 and 15. And the naivety, I stood alongside Liam, opposite him, like, you know, and you held hurleys. Remember that? So we were holding hurleys, and casually said to him, "Which finger did you break, Liam?" Well, I won't tell you what he said, like, you know, but it was to mind your own business in a few words. So 67, that was it. 68, close game, lost by 2 points. 69, drew with them, like, you know. 70, we beat Newmarket, I had to say this, we beat Newmarket in 70 in the semi-final. 71, we again played Newmarket, and we again drew with them. Now, 71 one was ridiculous. We were winning by 7 points, I'd say, with about 8 minutes to go. Jim Woods came on as a sub. He only came on as a sub. And he was ambling above it. There was turnstiles in Cusick Park, nearly adjoining the pitch at the time, the town end. And he came on, he got a goal from the corner flag. That's a fact. He got another point as well. Yeah. Look at that one hurt now, I have to say.
Don't boil up.
Definitely, exactly. That one really hurt. 72 was, we pulled out in 72. And we're back again in 73. So we were in 6 out of 7 county finals. On the trot. Sorry, Donal.
I have one little anecdote about what started in 64. In 64, there was an open draw. And Jack Daly the Lord to mercy him, had taken the chair. And we noticed that the meeting, Jack Daly's reason for standing for the chair was to clean up Clare GAA, especially these lengthy meetings that the county board were undertaking. So, anyway, we were on one side of the draw, and Aero, who had a very good team at the time, and Newmarket were on the other. And Vincent Murphy says to me, he says, no, he says, the agenda will start, he says. Jack Daly come in, you be there, have your own man in it. And I'd forgotten whether it was Gussie or Chris Keane was with me. Anyway, but I was to propose to draw a stand. So that meant, firstly, that Newmarket would vote for it, because the home and away arrangement between Ennis and Newmarket meant that Newmarket would be playing Ennis in Newmarket. So, in terms of the votes of the people that were there, the early arrivals came to hear. At that time, the minutes used to be posted out to everyone. You had your proposed minutes be passed, proposed and seconded. Jack Daly on the next bit. What's the next bit? The championship. I proposed that the draw stands, and I got seconded. And Jack Daly says, that can't happen. He said, that can't happen. The old lads anyway proposed against it. They still continue an open draw, but the vote was taken. And I'm not certain whether it was Gussie or Chris Keane was with me, but we had two votes, the senior and the minor. And the next thing is, you had to stand up when you were voting. So Clarecastle anyway, Carey and Eoin other. And then I heard Ballier, and I heard Michal the Brooder, and Joseph the Brooder, Michael Broderick, Coco Broderick, and his brother Joseph Broderick, were in representing the Ballier Club. Michael McTighe, the county secretary, had his knife in their own. And that's how we got to the county final that year. We were on the other side of the draw, which was a clear passage, although we got very tough for Whitegate and Tulla. Whitegate, we only beat Whitegate a point that year.
Yeah.
But it's what the advice that we got from the old dog, Vincent Murphy. Like, he was the man that engineered that. He was outstanding that way. And outstanding for the club, even though the club never appreciated him, you know. The people appreciate him all right, but there were others that thought he was a waste, you know.
Gus, you know, you talked before, you moved to Newmarket in '67. Your timing wasn't brilliant. So you probably suffered as a Clarecastle man from '67 to '69, and then you're on the opposite side of it in '70, I suppose.
Yeah, it was. I was told the minute I moved on, I was a sort of a brave man, you know. I know in a joking manner, you know. I remember one particular occasion, and I don't know what match I was at down the market, which we went for a non afterwards, myself and another chap, and we started talking about the market players about hurling and all this sort of thing. And this particular fellow came over to me and shook my hand. He says, you'll have to be 40 years buried before you'll be accepted down here. Well, I laughed at that one. I still can tell that one all the time, you know.
Pascal, you lost your first three county finals, '67 to '69. We begin to think you were a bit of a jinx, no?
My boots. God, no. I never thought that we were going to be losing all the time. Just happy to be back again. I always thought we were going to win, and when we won in '70, I thought that was going to continue. I have to say, I suppose everybody does, but no. It's the game, it was. It wasn't. I suppose it's nice to win the championship, but it's just lovely playing it.
Yeah. I'm going to read you an extract here. We had, just to show you the difference between hurling back then in hurling now. This is 67, and this is from Joe Power's excellent book, chronicling the GAA in Clarecastle. And it's related to the 3 championship games in 1967, which included quotes from the Clare Champion newspaper. This wasn't all Joe Powers. The championship began with a match against Feakle. It was a tempestuous game in which members from both sides indulged at frequent intervals in ugly bouts of fisticuffs and wild hurley swinging, which to say the least made a mockery of the ideals of the GAA. Clarecastle won by a point, incidentally. Following this, Clarecastle dethroned the county champions Éireoga in an unruly game, which Clarecastle deserved to win by 2-4 to 1-3. Next, they met old rivals Newmarket in the quarter-final. From the throw-in, the atmosphere was tense, and the game rapidly degenerated into a battle. Such was the savagery of the combatants that had it not been for the intervention of the Gardaí, the game may never have finished. The champion reporter also said that had an American Army recruiting officer been present in Cusack Park, he would have been impressed by the ostentation of the unflinching commandos from Newmarket and Clarecastle. One would need a coat of arms to play hurling nowadays. Hurling wasn't for the faint of heart back then, Donal.
Yeah, well, sure. The difference, there were different attitudes to hurling. In Newmarket, they had this kind of continuous 7-day week hurling because they had matches in the field every night. Now, the emphasis in Clarecastle used to always be to get fit first. So that was to develop speed of sprinting and also to develop stamina. And Michael Stratford did a good job in all of those through those years. But the Newmarket advantage was, I think they, because of their continuous parish matches, developed skills that we took time to develop later. And when John Handley took over, John Handley changed the emphasis from sprinting and running, although he did some sprinting and running, but more to the skills of hurling, which they have in abundance in Clarecastle, but it took a while to develop. Now, they used to be, because of the nature, all the factors in Shannon, when you go for your break into a canteen, and there were Clarecastle and Newmarket for that year. The rivalry and the showmanship and the baiting that went on was unbelievable. These people would get really hot up, and some people had short fuses. It was very dangerous. The funny thing about it was that
it would be a little bit unfair, I'd say, to colour the whole scene as being unruly and things like that. There was a lot of it, it was a different game. There was a lot of good hurling in it, There was a lot of scrawny fellas that weren't involved in the fighting as well, myself included, But
I suppose a tough game as well.
There was tough games, and tough hurling was allowed as well. That's the funny part of it, because there wasn't as much protection afforded to the players. If you put up your hand for a ball, you were entitled to get it taken off you. Things like that. Nowadays it's like badminton or table tennis or something like that. It's hardly a contact sport anymore. And all the tactics and everything that they have. Back then there was different skills: overhead striking, ground hurling, heavy ball, big heavy old ball, big heavy hurling. The time 36, 37, I think the longer the hurley you had, the better it was supposed to be. But nowadays it's gone back to 34 inch or something like that, is it? Maybe that's what we should have been using then. But different games and all together.
We better move on.
On the 64 team, I think it would be just right to say it meant that it occurred that Dermot Fitzgerald played in that. He was 16 years of age.
Okay.
I'd just like to mention that.
Say, of all the games against Newmarket, have you ever looked back and say, we should have won that one, or you've been in a lot of finals against them,
Yeah, there was a lot of them close. Unfortunately, after a replay, we might have got a heavier beaten. But in a drawn game, it could go. It's a ball either way. So that you could say we could have won that. Definitely 68 we could have won it. We lost by 2 points. 71 was the one we were winning by 7 points, or 5 points or 7 points. I think it was 7 points.
Disaster.
We should have, that was a disaster. 73, we annihilated Newmarket. Every place except in the scoreboard. Like, and we let in 7 goals. We scored 4 goals and 16 points. Like. Them at the same time, we scored 3 goals in a pint the same day. So things like that, like, 78 we would have been favourites because they were saying Newmarket loves saying this. Sorry, go sick. Newmarket loved saying, like, that we were saying, we're only playing a show of oldies. Like, and they came out and they had to look at the run. They had to look. And the one was saying that Newmarket were very skillful. They were. But they were very clever. They were very crabbit. And I have a few in mind when I say that. Like, they were practicing Ronaldo dives back then, when no one else heard of it. You just come beside them and they'd fall. I served a little suspension on account of one of them diving about 10 yards away and no one near him. The referee, if you'd like to call him that, gave him a free. It was a cup semi-final, cup final.
We won't get bogged down on those things.
I'm bitter.
Time is limited, but we'll concentrate on 1970 in particular. So, I mean, you beat Rowan with a very powerful second half.
Yeah.
That was your first game in the quarterfinal. Yeah. I suppose the game that defined the whole season was that Newmarket game. Yes. I think there were they 7 or 8 points up with a couple of minutes to go. There were 5 up going into injury time, and he managed to turn it around with 2 late goals. Yeah. Yeah. What do you remember from that dramatic finish?
I got a goal in it anyway, that's all I know. I flicked the ball in, like, Tom Slattery took a free, dropped it into the square.
That was the winner.
Correct. So, Trixie was inside goal waiting with his mouth open. It was just good to get over them, like, even though it was the semi-final, like, it would have been much better if it was the final, but look, we were happy to beat them and get into the final, and we thought then we'd have a good chance against Crusheen, which proved to be a very tough nut, because they would have been at the time. Crusheen were probably they were in the top 3, So, and why they fancied themselves. So,
The Crusheen lads had a reputation too.
Oh yeah.
Their reputation was to hit first and ask questions.
Absolutely.
And in fairness, Tom Mack and Connell and a few more of them.
Joe Meany.
Yeah. And, I know Bernie Donlan scored a goal against us. And he'll go down in history for that.
Yeah.
And the thing about it was all backs that were played. They were defending, and they had a big defence. Yeah. And they had strong men as well.
Yeah, they're a lovely team now. There's some lovely hurlers. I have to say, Michael Cullen, the late Michael Cullen, Michael Culligan, John O'Donnell, Mick Maroney. I mean, they had a lovely team. And another thing that I would like to mention as well, people say that the people that score the goals or the points win the games. But in the drawing game against, and you might remember this, in the drawing game against Crusheen, the game was iffy, about a minute to go, and Michael Conlon went on a solo run, heading for the goal. All he did was put the ball over the bar. They would have won by a point. And Pat Helty followed him for about 40 yards or 50 yards straight behind him. Waited. Like, I know if one or two of the other boys had been involved, he'd have been floored. They'd have got a point from the free. And he followed him all the way into the 21, threw up the ball, and then hooked him. The ball dropped out and was cleared out, So I'll always remember that, So it's not always a fella puts the ball over the bar.
And say against Crusheen there, the drawing game, there was a bit of controversy at the end of that as well, was there?
It was. I have to talk about myself again, see, I was involved in it.
It seems that you're always involved in the controversy.
Not in the controversy. We drew the game. I got the last 2 points, both times to equalise. And at the final, at the death knell, Condon, yeah.
Yeah,
Patsy.
Patsy got the ball, like, you know, and struck it over the bar, but the referee had blown the whistle.
the referee said he had the whistle.
He said he had the whistle blown, like, you know.
Frank Murphy was the secretary.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Frank used to arrive in his big car.
it was awful.
Yeah, that was, like, you know, but look at it.
At least you got another bite of the cherry. Gus, Wax Considine was the captain that year, and he seemed to be an inspirational choice because he was an inspirational form that year, all year, wasn't he?
There's no doubt about it. And the boys really looked up to him, you know, because just because he was the captain, that he was Wax, you know, and Wax was always mixed around with the lads and everything else, and there was no. I didn't think that over the Christian Brothers we talked out, I think, that particular day.
Right.
And and the auditorium down to Christian Brothers, wasn't it? That's what we
Outside
were.
the friary, the friary, there was a little annex to the friary.
Was it?
It was there we talked out, that's right.
I thought there was one particular match anyway. We were over in the Brothers, and I thought it was the Wax's year captain.
Yeah, 71 we talked out there because I remember in the friary, we were celebrating the win and the cup got a kick.
The cup got the kick, yeah.
The friary.
They were all asking, they were all looking for Wax. Where was Wax? And everyone inside, he might be outside. He was laying in the cup outside, ready to give it another. See how far he want to kick it.
I suppose Dermot Fitzgerald's goal maybe in the replay had a big settling effect during the point ahead at half time. I don't think there was any score in the third quarter, but you finished off with the last 4 points to win it out.
We won it well for the finish.
I'd say it must have been a huge sense of relief and elation both together.
Pure relief, actually, and that's what it was, you know. I mean, I would have thought, like, you know, after winning the county final, you'd be saying, oh, you'd feel over the moon, like, you know, but it was just relief. You're going to have lost so many. And there you go.
And say, Donal, you had the handy number of being joint secretary. Like,
Jerry Murphy.
that's a very handy number, like, you know.
Handy with Jerry, all right.
But as an executive, say at the time, like, what did you do different, or to help get us over the line that time?
Pardon again?
What did you do different, say, as an executive, say that you're...
Well, the frustrations, like, were all the time boiling up. People believed, you know, that it was that Crusheen and the likes of those teams, like, were a walkover because, say, Clarecastle had been such a great team in the 40s and had built up such a reputation for being a great holding club, that when we met the likes of Crusheen, who had played junior and intermediate all their time, like, these were just the first years Crusheen were up in the thing. So, like, a lot of people, like, had left kind of responsibility to a few of us, if you like. Gussie and I tried to manage things as we could. Chris Keane came in to help us, didn't he? He came in. And Jerry Murphy and Patrick McMahon encouraged everyone that they met on the street to go training. And we had a big list. One of the things that we did in the 70s or in the 60s and early 70s was change the jersey. The Clarecastle jersey had been a hoop, black and white hoops. And I found a secretary like that. After every match, instead of having 20 jerseys going home, I might have 15, or I might have 14. And I'd ask Pascal the next day, what did you do with that jersey you brought it? Oh, I left it at home. And so that ended. We changed the kind of jersey we had. John Daly pointed out that himself and Willie Handley had a particular kind of jersey with just epaulettes in black on the top and a white thing. So we got John Daly to order a new set of jerseys, and we did away with the hoops. Now, the hoops were always very, very distinguished and very good. But that was an administrative problem that I can tell you that we had that time, and we changed it. Then we had to get, because of the expansion of people here between youngsters and everything, we had to get maybe 4 sets of jerseys. And we had to get sponsors. John Daly was a great man to do sponsors. And I think one of the first sponsors we got out of Rosh, was it Rosh? No, it wasn't. It was someone.
No, it was before that.
We got 2 sponsors, and we had to buy 2 sets, and we had a silver circle, in which people sold this shilling a line thing, a silver circle, and it would go for 10 weeks, or maybe 20 weeks, and there was a weekly draw. And the biggest sellers during that time were Mickey Keane and John McInerney. And they were outstanding, and they competed. And Michael Murphy, the Lord have mercy him over here, he used to sell quite a lot of them in SPS. And I don't know, remember Pascal, you used to sell them in the air traffic control.
Yeah.
And there were a few more used to sell. But that was the income we had, apart from a Churchgate collection.
Yeah, Ronnie and John McInerney, that is, and Mickey Keane were very good, like, for organising silver circles, and even at the Latters, when it subsequently started, they used to sell them there as well, so we did all little raffles like that. But you were going back to what Donal actually used to do to kind of inspire. I remember when we were talking out for a final or a big match like that, if we talked out in the hall or wherever we talked out, Donal used to insist on music being played, and he'd have a marching song, like one of them ones, you had 2, one of them was the West Awake, and it would blast out, and it was good. The Munster team rugby crowd do that and all things like that. And you had another marching song, something about fighting men shoulder to shoulder or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. But it was inspirational, so
all the hurling teams do it now,
Now they're doing it now.
They've eventually copped on.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time.
There was a song, wasn't there? We Are the Magpies, the mighty Magpies. That was the music. What was that music? Do you remember that?
No, but you had a different one than that now.
In the dressing room before the vote. The warm-up used to be. You look at it today and all this carry on in Croke Park about the warm-up. The warm-up used to take 5 minutes inside the dressing room.
Drag of a fag.
Marching till We Are the Magpies. Roaring at one another. And Michael Slattery would have a particular fella that hadn't been performing in the previous few matches, and he'd hit him a wallop on the shoulder to get the blood moving.
Horses for courses.
Yeah.
Pascal, I know you played senior hurling for 70 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose for any under-12s out there, you did play in 4 different decades, and you won titles in 3 of those decades. Played in 12 finals, won 4 championships. Would that be correct?
Well, 13 and 14, like, and
4 senior championships.
4 senior championships, yeah.
Just because 1970 was your first, does it kind of create a special bond, I suppose, within the group when you meet them now, even to this day, I suppose?
Well, that's what hurling does for you, anyway, so I mean, and that's the huge benefit of hurling. Like, I'm still involved with yourself and a couple more of the boys in the under-12s, and you have a connection,
Yeah.
You have a connection with you, you have a connection with the younger fellas, and then the other guys as well, so it's talked about. It's a part of the village. The GAA is a huge part of the village, so you automatically have a connection. Like, people associate you with the GAA.
I suppose just a word on the 4. Let's say Donal mentioned the 4 people that have passed away, the kind of fallen heroes from the 1970 setup. You have Fondley Scanlon, and obviously we spoke about Wax and Jim Nestor.
Kelly, Jim Nestor.
Yeah.
Paddy Kelly.
Pat Talty,
Pat Talty and Patsy Condon,
So, I mean, great warriors, all of them, really.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. Like, everybody played a part in it. Everybody had their own skill. Like, everybody had everything to add to the game, So
So, lads, I suppose we're kind of coming close to the end. 2020 has been probably a forgettable year rather than but how has it been for ye this year? Just shortly, we only have a few minutes left.
Well, I was cocooning in the first part of the year out with my son Donal in his house. And while the room and the facilities were comfortable, in the end, I think it's a fierce limitation. Like, you want to have space to move. And cocooning, I think, was not a great idea, but they're still doing it and they're insisting on people. And I think that's having an effect on elderly people, especially when you're alone all day. And the best best day I'd have is watching the various quizzes on the television, Pointless and all these other programs, and taxing my brain that way. But it hasn't been a very upsetting time in which you can't see your relatives, you can't see your grandchildren, and that's a loss.
I suppose we're just going to finish now, but just to mention as well that, there was the Munster Club run, I suppose, that went on to the following year, nearly the entire year as it worked out. There was a couple of replays in that one as well, your famous replays in Patrick's Well and UCC, and got to the final against Rossway, who went on to win the first All-Ireland club final as well. And you played in 3 finals that year in 71, the 1970 Clare Cup final, obviously the 71 county final against Newmarket, and that Munster final was 2 weeks before the Newmarket game, I think. Roughly, they're all in the space of a couple of weeks anyway. I managed to lose all 3 of them. So, to get to a Munster Club final in your first year, must have been great.
Yeah, we had the first 2 rounds were in the Munster Championship were drawn against Patrick's Well and beat them in the replay against UCC, who had a fantastic team of 9 or 11 county players. UCC, Ray Cummins, full forward. Fantastic achievements, like Oliver Plunkett did a great game the same day against Ray Cummins, held him scoreless, and we let ourselves down in the Munster final, so that's the way it went. But we had a good outing.
The sense of tradition has been great, and it was illustrated in 1995 with the number of Clarecastle lads that were on the team alone, and. The press didn't acknowledge the substantial contribution that Clarecastle made. Well, they may have made a contribution, but they could have developed it quite a lot more for the individuals that took part in that. And that was heritage. You take Anthony Daly's father, Pacho. He was chairman of the Clarecastle Club. He won his county final in '49. But he was chairman also in the 60s. And all the others, even the Ballier lads even coming in.
Yeah.
The unity in the parish was great as well, and that's something I regret. I think that Clarecastle and Ballier should always have been together. But the Ballier lads have shown that they have the ability to win county finals and indeed go Munster final.
Yeah.
And they have an outstanding hurler in Tony Kelly, whose dad played with us.
That's
right, yeah.
That's correct.
And he used to play on the wing, and I used to be shouting at him, throw it over the bar. And he was good at it too. Run down the wing. He was good. But before you finish, I'd like to say thank you to Father Malone for developing this kind of situation, which our friends who are following on Facebook enjoy, and particularly the availability of the prayers, the Mass on a Sunday. And it's outstanding for older people that they can get access to Mass as it stands without having to leave the safety of their homes.
Absolutely, we echo that. Time, Ty Collins, Collins is junior, so hopefully when things calm down, hopefully maybe on St. Patrick's Day when we have the mass here and stuff like that, there maybe can be a ceremony where they can pass on the tie pins and that occasion. But for the moment, and you know, we could have mentioned a lot more incidents in the matches, and we could have talked about it, and maybe there was people that weren't mentioned, but we can assure you that there's going to be match reports and stuff coming up on Clarecastle GAA and the Facebook and the website in the coming weeks. Is going to cover all that stuff as well. We can't cover everything in the one night, but for the moment, we're going to say thanks very much to Gus, Pascal and Donal, to Neville. Thanks very much to Father Pat again. We've got to go, but everyone stay safe and we'll talk to you again soon.